Right, on to this one now. The African Transformation Movement has condemned the Constitutional Court's delay on delivering suspended Public Protectors Busisiwe Mkhwebane suspension judgment. President of the party, Vuyo Zungula, says that this displays a lack of respect for the Public Protector and her constitutional role. Zungula, president of the ATM, joins us now via Zoom for more. Mr. Zungula, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Explain to us what your views are around the delays of the Constitutional Court.
Morning. Look, in June last year, we know that there was a complaint that was submitted to the Public Protector, Advocate Mkhwebane, on the role or the violation of Mr. Ramaphosa in relation to Phala. Few days after that, the Public Protector confirmed that the complaint has been received and the investigation will be done. Then immediately after that, she was suspended by Mr. Ramaphosa, which is something that is wrong, because you cannot suspend someone that is investigating you. Now, on September last year, the High Court in the Western Cape ruled that Mr. Ramaphosa acted in a manner that was unlawful, in a manner that was an abuse of power when he suspended Advocate Mkhwebane. Now, in November last year, you find that this matter was heard on an urgent basis by the Constitutional Court in order to allow Advocate Mkhwebane to return to work and to fulfill her constitutional duties as a public protector. That was heard on an urgent basis. Now, we are sitting here almost in July already, and that judgment has not been handed down, meaning what the Constitutional Court has been doing, it is aiding the unlawful conduct of a president that unlawfully suspends people that are investigating him. So it is our view as the ATM that, number one, you have a judiciary in our country in which we operate in a constitutional democracy system whereby the last line of defense, when Parliament fails, when the executive fails, people ought to trust the Constitutional Court or the judiciary to adjudicate on matters. Now, if the same judiciary that is trusted to effect justice in our country has been
Mr. Zungula, are you still there?
Acting in a manner that brings injustice to Mkhwebane by delaying a judgment. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Continue, please.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so when you have a Constitutional Court that is the one that is acting in a manner that brings injustice to Advocate Mkhwebane, then that will erode the trust that people ought to have on the judiciary. So it is our view as the ATM that this judgment should be released as soon as possible, so that you do not have an academic judgment whereby after the term has ended, the Constitutional Court rules that Mr. Ramaphosa was acting in an unlawful manner, because at that time it will make no material difference to the role of Advocate Mkhwebane.
You know, there's something to be said about the timing that we're dealing with at the moment, right? I mean, we're also covering the story about the fracas that has unfolded between the Chief Justice Raymond Zondo as well as Parliament, right? And a really big tug of war there around the separation of powers. What do you think it says to South Africans when you have, though, party leaders such as yourselves calling into question the very validity of the work done by the highest court in the nation?
Look, the judges in our country are not gods. They need to be criticized when it warrants so. So if you're going to have judges whereby the Superior Courts Act stipulates that judgments needs to be issued within 3 months, and you're going to have a judgment that was, you're going to have a case, a matter that was brought to the Constitutional Court on an urgent basis, because it deals with an unlawful suspension of a head of a Chapter 9 institution by a sitting president who's been investigated for various crimes. Now, if that particular Constitutional Court does not do what the law stipulates, or he acts in a manner that brings into question their legitimacy, we are supposed to question that. Similarly, the Speaker is very correct to say it cannot be that the Chief Justice is now going to delve into political matters, is going to delve into matters that he still needs to adjudicate on, because as a judge, you need to be, you need to avoid bias. You need to avoid taking your opinions to the public domain on matters that you know that they are going to come for adjudication to the very same judiciary. Therefore, this should not be about politicians or the speakers, but should be rather about the conduct of the very same judiciary or constitutional court judges that are not acting in a manner that is expected of them as the last line of defense in our country.
Let's go back to the Section 194 inquiry that has been unfolding in Parliament. I mean, what do you rate just how that really has played out? And I'm keen to hear as well why the African Transformation Movement has not submitted questions to the Public Protector, as have other political parties that are members of Parliament.
When Advocate Mkhwebane was suspended, the first assurance she got from President Ramaphosa was the issue of legal funding. The Constitutional Court also further reiterated that in every part of the process, there must be legal representation. She must be afforded legal representation. As we sit here now, Advocate Mkhwebane does not sit with legal representation. And the fact that they've changed the method of the inquiry from oral evidence into written evidence, now that does not take away the need for Advocate Mkhwebane to always be given, to be afforded legal representation. Therefore, as the ATM, we cannot legitimize an unfair process because, number one, that process currently is violating a constitutional court order that stipulated that she must always be afforded legal representation. Number two, the basic principle in terms of our constitution of legal representation. Therefore, it is our view that ATM cannot take part in a method or in a process that undermines the basic principle and basic human rights of our citizens. Secondly, it cannot be that we are going to allow a case whereby Parliament, which is a lawmaking institution that needs to oversee the functioning of the executive, we cannot allow a Parliament that will violate the very same laws that is elected, to actually craft in the best interest of our people. Yeah. So that is our view as the ATM.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though, if you'll allow me, Mr. Zungula, because ultimately one could argue that what you are doing and not participating in this process of even sending questions to the public protectors, to some extent a betrayal to your electorate that has put you in those positions and given you seats in Parliament to participate in parliamentary processes. What do you say to that argument that I then put on the table?
As the ATM were elected to participate in parliament processes, as long as they are constitutional, as long as they are within the law, because even Parliament itself must be subjected to the very same constitution, very same laws of our country. We cannot have a Parliament that acts unlawfully, and you are going to have members of Parliament participating in an unlawful conduct of Parliament, because we are operating in a constitutional democracy, meaning the work of Parliament must always be consistent to the very same constitution of our country. So this process, everyone knows it, that number one, the public protector must be afforded legal representation. Number two, that was a promise that was given also by the president of our country. Then the last thing is that now, as we sit here now, it is not by Advocate Mkhwebane's doing that she does not have legal representation. You'll note that there's going to be a lot of noise that is made about the amount of legal fees paid to represent Advocate Mkhwebane. But when ministers are going to court, when the very same president goes to court, the discussion is that discussion is not there. Therefore, it cannot be that we are going to have a head of a Chapter 9 institution having to defend their work in light with what she was mandated to do as the head of Chapter 9 institution. Then she's going to be forced to use her own personal money in order to fund those legal fees. Whereas when it's the president or ministers, the same argument is not advanced. So we as the ATM, we cannot take part in an unlawful conduct of Parliament.
All right, let's leave it there, Mr. Zungula. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. We hope to chat some more in the future. Vuyo Zungula, of course, is the president of the African Transformation Movement.